Sharing live stream, you should be good now.
Absolutely.
All right, we'll call the Easton Board of Education regular meeting to order at 7:02. And first order of business is the consent agenda for the approval of the minutes, 12:13 regular Easton Board of Education meeting. We have a chance to take a quick review. They look good to me. Any other- Good, all good, okay. Approved. We'll move to item 3, and we'll look at public comment. Remember the public. Their way in.
Do you have public comment or in public comment? Nothing.
Okay, fair enough. We'll move to board member comment. All right, seeing none, we will get right into it. Item 5, discussion of possible action. 2023-2024 Easton budget. Take it away, Dr. McKinnon. Okay. Anyway.
I just want to see.
Well, good evening, Board of Education members, faculty, staff, leaders, and people tuning in from home if you happen to be watching on YouTube. This evening, we're honored to present the Easton Public School budget for 2023-2024. We've said that education is an investment in human capital, and a school budget reflects our educational values and defines our priorities each year. For the past 9 months, we've been developing our strategic priorities. And when we delivered this presentation 12 months ago, we discussed the link between priorities and financial investments. Tonight, we will aim to connect those links and hopefully define a starting point for our budget process this year and for years into the future. Each dollar that we allocate towards local schools makes a difference. And we're pleased to announce that over 1,600 Easton residents voted for the budget last year, and almost 80% of residents voted to support the education budget. So I believe this community values education. I believe our neighborhood schools improve property values and reflect how families feel about their most important asset, which is their children. Therefore, we have put forth a budget with equal parts quality and economic value. We are committed to not spend money on things that aren't working, and we do not want to spend more if less is just as effective. But as we begin the process tonight, we've already made some cuts. We've already shifted funding priorities to next year. If 8 in 10 of the voting public supported our educational initiatives this year, we hope that if we explain our priorities in a clear way, that we'll have the same success. So as we proceed through the process, I would like to ask you to ask yourselves this question: how do we improve rather than how much can we afford? And if we ask that question, I know that we can build support for our priorities again this year. So our budget presentation tonight is delivered or organized into 7 sections. And if you're viewing the presentation at home, you can scan or by using your camera phone, or your camera app in your phone, that QR code in the bottom right corner of the presentation. And you'll see that QR code throughout the presentation. You'll be able to ask questions during the budget. We emailed a form to our board members tonight, and you'll be able to use that form to ask questions during the presentation if you would like to. Again, the budget is organized into 7 sections. The first section is just a brief introduction. The second section outlines our strategic priorities. Third, we're going to discuss the main budget drivers for the 2023-2024 budget. 4, we have a section dedicated to enrollment and overall staff changes and grants. 5, we have a detailed overview of each cost center, the total cost, the percent change, and examples of accounts that have significant changes, either up or down. And finally, or as we get towards section 6, we'll discuss the overall budget summary, present our recommendation for 2023-2024, and we'll discuss next steps. So in section 1, as I discussed, we've made several changes to our budget process to accomplish 3 goals. First, we want to increase monitoring and control. Second, we strive to increase accountability and find efficiencies. And third, we wanted to make information much easier to find in the past. So as a result, last year we transitioned from a budget object model to a cost center model. And I think everyone was pleased with the results last year as we organized over 400 accounts into 6 broad cost centers. And those cost centers included each school, special education, facilities, technology, district-wide curriculum instruction, and also central office. One of our key features is the ability to make real-time changes. So if we change a supply line by $100, it'll roll up to the master roll-up. If we decide to decrease health insurance by 1% or 2%, you'll see that change immediately. And finally, Sarah introduced the idea of being able to search for things within the budget. So if you wanted to search for the play director stipend, you can find that directly in the budget just by using the search technique. One of the things that we tried to do this year was to identify and show actual expenditures versus budgeted expenditures. And we're not going to show that on the top level budget, but we wanted to let you know that we brought in over 11,000 different expenditures into our lower level areas of the budget. And we were able to determine what we actually spent in a certain area. And we've made some of those preliminary adjustments to get to tonight. So we know that we overspent a certain area or underspent a certain area. And it truly means that that is how we budgeted with a zero budget model. But we hope to kind of make that process more consistent and make it more valuable throughout the year. We're starting to see what other school districts are presenting their education budgets. And at this time of the year, superintendents are really presenting their models. And during this budget cycle, you may see a few budgets lower than ours, but you'll certainly see some budgets that are consistently higher than ours and certainly in the 5% range. And there are budget drivers like health insurance, special education, utilities, transportation that are pushing budgets higher and higher each year and crowding out some student improvement initiatives. So as pointed out in the previous slide, school districts are going to be facing increasing fiscal challenges. However, we're committed to these 4 goals, and that is we're committed to allocate grant funds to reduce operations. We want to create a multi-year budget plan to promote financial stability. We want to use our strategic plan that we developed over the past 12 months to describe our priorities for this year and for the next 4 years. And we want to continue to focus on high leverage instructional practices. So as I stated in the introduction, a budget is based on our strategic plans, and highly successful organizations and school districts have one thing in common, and that is they are future focused and strategic. Therefore, it is important to craft actionable priorities that improve student achievement and guide the allocation of resources. So last spring, we had some conversations that centered around what the ideal school looks like and the skills and dispositions our students need to be successful when they graduate. We sorted through all of that raw data and we developed 6 broad priorities. And our priorities, we're going to talk briefly about them because they are explained and linked to some of our initiatives throughout the budget process. One of our goals was to make this information accessible. So the images that you see here are a website that we developed that define our key references, our key priorities. And we intend to roll out this website when we roll out the other tools and documents to the town, to the public, and to our town boards. And these are 4 screenshots from the website that we've developed. We want to make the point that whenever improving an organization, priorities and actions require 3 things: financial resources, human resources, and expertise. And the most challenging task is to link priorities to student achievement. This is where the expertise is needed. We've incorporated metrics and goals from our district and school improvement plans that you saw in October when we developed the DIP and the SIP That is present on our website as we explain why we need a strategic plan. And we've also identified key milestones that remind us that the investments that we're making today and during this budget process will build significant value for our students. And these milestones are again defined on the website, and they will include things like students will complete 500 computer science lessons by the time they reach grade 5. We want to increase the percentage of students taking Algebra 1 in 8th grade. We want to increase access and participation in students taking extracurricular activities. We want to ensure high quality instruction and learning. We want to increase student collaboration. We wish to expand computer science and engineering pathways at the high school and increase opportunities for students to study their interests and their learning experiences. So another key area of this website is defining how our priorities were developed. They weren't grown in a lab. They grew from stakeholder conversations, beginning with a focus question, focus groups, identifying themes and optimizing each priority. We truly believe that this work is a work in progress, and we wanted it to be digital because we recognize that these changes change as we go throughout the budget process. As we mentioned before, our priorities fall into 6 broad categories. These 6 priorities include high quality teaching and learning, developing a culture that promotes a nurturing and welcoming climate and deeper and more engaged learning, improving school facilities to ensure student safety, long-term sustainability, and to enhance student learning. 4, meeting the needs of all learners. 5, developing a kindergarten through 12th grade portrait of graduate that emphasizes real-world experiences and innovative learning. And finally, 6, promoting skillful operations and in style. This is a visual image of the website and how the priorities are going to be shared. And it's a really interactive way to kind of show what our goals are. And again, we're excited to share this website with you once we're ready to roll out all of the budget details. So in section 3, we're going to discuss the main budget drivers. Some of these budget drivers are probably not a surprise to you. For example, medical insurance was funded at $2,093,000, $780 last year. It is currently slated for a 10.5% increase. We've secured Brown & Brown, our consultant for medical insurance, to present to the Easton Board of Education on January 17th, prior to our next budget workshop. And our goal is to review health insurance claim history, the health of our benefits account, and to make some decisions about this 10.5% increase. If you recall, last year, we actually budgeted health insurance at a negative based on our claim history and the health of our benefits account. The utility slide is a driver at $494,423. It shows a 6% increase. We'll talk more about that in the upcoming cost center. Curriculum instruction, you see that is a significant increase budget to budget. And next year we intend to budget approximately $172,635. And I've talked about this before, but this cost center is analogous to R&D. And professional development and the curriculum cost center should be humming each year. It is a clear sign that we have a strategic plan and goals to improve teaching and learning when you see an increase like this. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about this. This increase includes an Easton and Reading math coordinator, middle school math textbooks, which we've talked about, middle school science curriculum, which was approved by the board recently. In transportation, you see a 4.13% increase. And as you've seen at home, gas prices have increased. Our bus contract increases about 2% each year. And we're in year 3 of 4 of our contract. We need to look at our bus contract in 2024. Finally, special education costs have increased dramatically. Student needs are increasing and likely exacerbated by the pandemic. We're seeing changes and increases in referral and eligibility rates. And so we'll delve into that more during the special education cost center. In section 4, we're going to be talking about enrollment, staff changes, and grants. So according to Prouder, between 2007 2020, student enrollment in the Eastern Public Schools actually declined from approximately 1,100 students down to 882 students. But that student enrollment decline has rebounded in 2022 up to 900 students and is projected to increase by over 142 students over the next 10 years. We did not budget any FTE changes at Seminole Staples Elementary School. We recommend keeping FTE the same as the enrollment picture comes into clarity over the next few weeks. We may need 5 or 6 kindergarten teachers in kindergarten. We're currently budgeted for 5. Currently, we have 6 teachers in 3rd grade, but we may only need 5 teachers in 3rd grade, meaning that we could use the FTE in grade 3 for kindergarten or vice versa if needed. There is a change, which we'll talk about during the Seminole Staples cost center, is that if we only need 5 sections of kindergarten, that means we can reduce the kindergarten aid. We added a 6th aid when we had 6 sections, and there's no change at Helen Keller. This slide is an overview of the certified staff changes that are linked to our strategic priorities and will be explained in other areas of our cost center. First, you'll see a request for a K-8 math coordinator that will be shared between Easton and Reading. The Easton share is actually only $40,000, not the $120,000 that you see on your screen. We'll explain that later. It's the split between Easton and Reading, and we are offsetting that. Second, we have a growing number of English language learners, which means students who are not proficient in English. Therefore, we have added a shared multilingual language teacher, formerly named an ELL teacher or an English language learner teacher, as a 0.4 FTE shared resource between Easton, Reading, and Region 9. Third, we are requesting an increase in custodian support at Helen Keller Middle School. And we're looking to increase a custodian from part-time to full-time. This is a request that's been in the budget for several years. And fourth, you've heard about science of reading and the increase in numbers of students that are struggling to read proficiently. And we currently have special education teachers and reading teachers that are providing specialized services to students. And we are requesting a shared literacy teacher in Easton and Reading. And I believe this strategic priority is a basic service that we need to provide, and we're morally responsible to provide to all students, because reading at a grade level is, we believe, a right. Finally, we've removed the K-12 facilities manager position that was shared between Eastern Reading and Region 9. You will see a configuration change at central office, and we'll discuss this new position that is budget neutral, which is a new way of organizing facilities and operation management. So we'll explain that in the upcoming slides as well. We have offset operation spending using grant funding. So this slide represents some of the grants and which cost centers that they're contained in. For example, in Title I, we're offsetting a math paraeducator and a Helen Keller instructional paraprofessional by $58,957. You'll see the cost center location on the right-hand side. The Title II funds in the amount of $16,792 are going towards professional development teachers. We have some funds from Title III going towards the MLL teacher, and we have approximately $10,000 from Title IV supporting our middle school science materials and elementary reading materials. And those cost centers, depending on the grant, are located, and we've identified where those grants are in each cost center. COVID relief grants are starting to wind down, but we do have some ESSA funds that we used this current school year and that we're intending to use in 2023, 2024. Our assistant superintendent has worked very hard not to create a grant cliff, which some districts are facing. But we believe these funds have been responsive to students' needs, and you can see some examples there of how we're using our ESSA funds in the 23-24 budget. $19,924 for a math paraeducator. You'll see the $20,000 math coordinator offset there, and the cost centers that they're associated with on the right. So one of our requests, as I mentioned earlier, is the request for a kindergarten through 8th grade math coordinator, which is a position that is reflected in our district strategic priorities. This position provides direction and leadership for the overall administration and coordination of the mathematics program for grades K to 8, and the effective implementation of the math curriculum, assessments, and resources. You may recall that math achievement has declined by approximately 10% over the past 3 years. We are also studying and plan to implement a new math curriculum in grades 6 through 8, and these actions are part of a two-pronged strategy to improve student achievement in the area of mathematics. The total cost of this position is estimated at approximately $120,000 and shared 50% with Reading. However, we've only budgeted $40,000 in the 2023-2024 Easton budget, offsetting $20,000 with ESSA funds. This currently resides in the Curriculum and Instruction Cost Center and is reflected in Priority 1. As mentioned earlier, English language learner simply refers to students who are not currently proficient as English speakers and are in the process of developing their language acquisition skills. An MLL, a multilingual learner teacher, works with L students or those students who English is not a primary language. MLL teachers work with Ls to help them acquire fluency in English, both spoken and in written word. They work with students kindergarten through 12th grade. And so therefore this position is a shared position with 3 districts, Easton, Reading, and Region 9. This position will be in Easton as a 0.4, representing $12,481 reflected for Samuel Staples and Helen Keller. This position requires various certifications, and there's ways in which we can provide more details in upcoming workshops in how this position is going to help student achievement and professional learning. Evidence strongly suggests that when reading instruction is delivered by highly knowledgeable and skilled teachers, all but the most severe reading disabilities can be resolved early on. And this is the goal of the structured language, of the structured literacy teacher. This is a teacher that provides targeted reading instruction and support to individuals and small groups of students with complex reading and writing profiles. They've completed extensive supervised practical experiences dedicated to advancing literacy profiles of students with specific learning disabilities in the area of reading, including dyslexia, and are able to serve students who are at the beginning, intermediate, and advanced stages of reading, spelling, and written instruction. Currently, we have 0.2 FTE allocated towards structured literacy services in our professional services line, and our goal is to increase that 0.2 to 0.5, which ultimately creates a 1.0 shared position between Easton and Reading. So you'll see an increase of that of about $15,500 in each school, and the position will go to the most need. Currently, we have 75 students in both schools that this would benefit from these particular services. Our goal is to create this position this year and possibly create another position next year because of the growing needs of students with specific learning disabilities, struggles in reading, and dyslexia. The Human Resource Manager is an integral component of central office, and Miss Vicky Cran has served in this role with distinction for many years. We all feared the day when Vicky contemplated retirement because she not only leads her office with integrity and passion, she is certainly somewhere in the top 1% of professionals that I've worked with in my career. So we all know that a goal without a plan is just a wish. So we have set a human resources placeholder in our budget next year. And the Human Resource Manager has a current salary of $125,000. And with various stipends, it matches approximately $135,000. So I recommend next year that we set our human resource salary at approximately $135,000. There are many different ways districts arrange the human resources position. Some have human resources directors, some have legal backgrounds, there are some districts that have assistant superintendents of human resources. And for now, we recommend continuing with the human resource management configuration. And so we plan to budget approximately the same amount of money that we've budgeted this year for human resources. And speaking of reevaluation, this is the new position that we've added in the budget. which is as a result of replacing the K-12 facilities manager. I've reevaluated that position 6 months into the year and determined that the current configuration and model does not fit our needs. As a reminder, the operations and facilities is an overwhelming responsibility for a small number of central office folks organizing and running 3 districts. And the current, well, previously at Joel Barlow High School, there was a director of buildings and grounds for many years. We tried a cost sharing plan for that position where Easton and Reading each contributed approximately $17,400, and we created that shared K-12 facilities manager. But in reality, that position has predominantly stayed at the high school, being the largest school campus that we have. So it was time to kind of rethink how that position was going to operate. And so therefore we proposed the following 3 steps. One is return the K-12 facilities manager to the high school as the director of buildings and grounds, repurpose the $17,400 that we were investing in the K-12 facilities manager, reorganize the responsibilities of the current business manager, which is a position that we've had at central office, and add the responsibilities of the facilities and operations. So as a result, we'll be creating a position at central office named the Facilities and Operations Manager. This position is cost neutral because essentially we're capturing the funds from the business manager salary and the previous investment, $17,400 from the K-12 facilities manager. So if you look at the slide, you can visually see how we intend to organize that position. Just to help you understand the relationship and what that looks like in terms of an organizational chart. This chart shows the relationship between the superintendent, the director of finance, and the positions that are really immediately under the director of finance. And under the director of finance, you have an accountant, an accounts payable clerk, and a second accountant. The second accountant was a new position this year because we cut a central office secretary, and we used those funds to fund that second accountant. So the new position, which is the facilities and operations position, would really capture the responsibilities of the business manager and add positions of the facilities manager. So we see this position who is someone who is extremely knowledgeable in securing grants, coordinating with state and local officials, finding economies through RFPs, bids, continuing to manage facilities, breaks and fixes. Someone who is able to coordinate the replacement of a roof, someone who's able to coordinate the replacement of a water heater, for example, and while continuing with the responsibilities of food services and transportation. So we'd be happy to discuss kind of what this position looks like and provide a job description, but essentially it's budget neutral and it's just reorganizing those current positions that we've talked about. Section 5. So section 5 is just really an overview of each individual cost center. And our first cost center is Samuel Staples Elementary School. This cost center is comprised of certified staff like administration, classroom teachers, and instructional support specialists, non-certified staff like paraprofessionals, custodians, and secretaries, and kind of an operation bucket, which includes supplies, equipment, dues and fees, professional development. The total cost center is $5,449,712, which represents 29% of the overall Easton budget and represents an increase of 1.37%. New minimum wage goes into effect June 1, 2023, which is $15 per hour. So we've had to make some contractual increases to our non-certified staff. You'll see the request for the shared MLL teacher, the multilingual learner teacher, in this cost center for $12,481. If we stay at 5 sections of kindergarten, you'll see a decrease in this cost center of 1 kindergarten aide. We are still funding 1 math aide from ESSA funds this year. We'll continue to fund that next year as well. So you won't see that $18,508 allocated to that aide in the budget. We continually send teachers to professional development. We're using Title II grants, so you'll see those offsets in that budget as well. Our second cost center is Helen Keller Middle School. This cost center is also comprised of certified staff, non-certified staff, and operations. The total cost center is $3,623,145. It represents 19.3% of the overall Easton budget and is increasing by 4.29%. Certified staff in this cost center is increasing close to 5% based on step changes. There are a lot of teachers going from step 15 to step 16. We are also anticipating hiring a new math teacher in grade 8, which fills the current vacancy. That teacher currently has a 6-year degree and is at the max step. So you'll see an increase in certified staff there. You will also see the request for the multilingual language learner teacher here for $12,481, as we saw in the Samuel Staples line. Instructional paras are down 12.3% because we are offsetting those this line by using Title I funds in the amount of $29,478. We currently have 2.5 math paras at Helen Keller Middle School. 1.5 of those math paras were funded through ESSA grants, which expire this year. So we plan to fund at least one full-time math para using operation funds. So you'll see that request in the budget. You'll see an increase in non-instructional paras by approximately $9,450 for a part-time recess aid request. As in previous years, and as mentioned as a driver, you'll see a request for a part-time custodian to a full-time custodian in the amount of $28,268. You'll see a request for a $16,000 for a student intern. And if you do the simple math, we spend about $115 per day for a sub, multiply that by 180 days, it's approximately $20,700. This will lead us down the road in future workshops in the area of how much are we paying subs. Again, currently $115. We may have to increase that to $120. Can we increase subs to $120, keep that area flat? If we see that as a potential place to decrease, the substitute line is always a target area. When we look at that, we'll have to discuss what the risks are when we come to that. There's various equipment requests that were removed from the Helen Keller budget. Further evaluation is required to kind of study and examine the facilities area budget, to have conversations with Alicia and Jeff about our capital improvement plan and where we are with that. I know that you recently traveled to the schools and started to study that as well. And so we'll talk about some of those requests in our facilities budget coming up. Our third cost center is special education. This cost center is again comprised of certified staff, but this time it's administration, classroom teachers, speech and language pathologists, school psychologists, and so on. Non-certified staff, which include paraprofessionals, behavioral technicians, and secretaries. And finally, an instruction and operation budget, which in special education also means supplies, equipment, dues and fees, professional development, but includes transportation, tuition, and outplacement. This total cost center is $3,697,889, which represents approximately 20% of the overall Easton budget, but remarkably is a flat increase next year. So that's a great job to Jen DeConte and her team. There are some escalating costs in special education, like outplacement, as you witnessed during the budget outplacement driver, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. During this school year, we moved special education teachers based on student needs. Essentially, we moved one teacher from Helen Keller Middle School to Samuel Staples School. This explains the 6-point FTE to 7-point FTE, the 6 FTE decrease to 5 at Helen Keller and the 6 to 7 increase at Samuel Staples. These are budget to budget changes that we've made this year based on student need. However, you also see an increase of one teacher, one special education teacher at Samuel Staples School based on student enrollment and student needs. As mentioned earlier, we are adding a shared structured literacy teacher to meet the needs of our students with various reading disabilities. So that is an increase of $15,600 and a corresponding decrease in professional services in the Orton Gillingham line. The pre-K teacher decreased based on a resignation this year and hiring a replacement at a lower step. But the opposite is true for school psychologists based on a resignation and hiring a school psychologist at a higher step. And the social worker line decreased based on a resignation and a lower step higher. We are decreasing 2 behavioral techs, which represents a savings. However, we are adding a BCBA for $62,402, which is an increase in our budget. However, we will point out in workshops that the quote for BCBA services, which was in our professional services line, totaled over $150,000. So it actually made sense to decrease professional services for behavioral services and employ our own person for $62,000. So we decreased behavioral services from $155,000 down to $55,000, which is a savings. The tuition and outplacement line increased by $180,786, which actually equals an increase lower than that at $123,786, because we transferred open choice out of this cost center, which was a reduction, and we moved that into a more appropriate cost center in the school's cost center. So overall, the special education budget is flat. We're legally required to provide services when outplacing students. And so that's where you're going to see the greatest need, which is in outplacement. And we're happy to delve deeper into that in an upcoming workshop. Our fourth cost center is facilities. This cost center is comprised of building and maintenance contracts, cleaning and repair projects, and supplies. The total cost center is $434,308, which represents 2.3% of the overall Easton budget, but a 27% increase budget to budget. The large drivers here are the escalating prices of basic supplies and the ongoing repairs of aging equipment at Helen Keller Middle School. You'll also see a request for a water heater repair that is needed at Senate Staples School for $13,861. This unit is really destined for replacement. And so I think a conversation with our newly formed facilities committee, we need to have a conversation. Are we fixing it or repairing it for $13,000? Are we replacing it for a larger amount? And that has budget implications. The supplies line has increased by 16.4%, which is about $12,000 related to that 16% increase is as a result of a new state mandate that requires us to add feminine hygiene products to be available in all bathrooms in grades 3 through 12. The project line has an increase of $25,000, and these projects include the media center window, carpet in the guidance lab, safety pads in the gym, bottle filler, a gym door repair, and these are all at Helen Keller. However, the story here are the items not included in the project line. We removed those. Those include $18,000 for classroom window shades, $84,000 for fire and security system improvements, a security system replacement for approximately $25,000. So there are items in our project line in facilities, but really there are items that aren't in our project lines. And that's what we have to talk about when we have those discussions about the capital improvement plan and where those items should be placed and when should they be targeted for upgrade. Our fifth cost center is technology. This cost center is comprised of salaries for our shared network administrator, maintenance of services, instructional software, management services, copier lease, and so on. The total cost center is $505,645, which represents 2.7% of the overall Easton budget and an increase of 6.2% overall. The tech salary line is decreasing by 10% due to the consolidation of the network administrator that's currently in this year's budget. We are now sharing a network administration between Easton and Reading instead of Easton having their own network administrator as in previous years. So that's a good job for us. Management software services are increasing because we added more security and filtering layers this year, including Rave and Naviance, which we've used in the past, but wasn't budgeted correctly. Hardware is increasing by 20%, which includes where we fund Chromebook replacements. We're pleased to announce that we are currently 1-to-1 with Chromebooks, which means we have enough Chromebooks for every student in the district. Only students in middle school really take Chromebooks home frequently. But we have planned a refresh and replacement cycle for Chromebooks, kindergarten through 8, which we're happy to talk about in more detail. You'll see an increase in E-rate equipment by approximately $20,000 because we are adding more access points in the community spaces in both schools to accommodate public engagement and town meetings. Again, we can provide more information on that topic. And not reflected in this budget are interactive whiteboards in both schools. And an interactive whiteboard is the presentation device you see tonight. They've reached end of life. And while we've made small pockets and changes over time, these are essential tools in our classroom, and we need a comprehensive plan to replace these interactive devices. And typically districts develop such a plan in a couple of ways. They can lease them over time. They can put them in a capital plan. And so we need to have a more in-depth conversation about how we're going to be replacing our interactive whiteboards in our school and what that looks like. Our sixth cost center is curriculum and instruction. This cost center is typically comprised of curriculum work, professional development, professional text like textbook. And this year we created a new salaried account in this cost center, which is the K-8 math coordinator that we talked about previously. The total cost center is $172,635, which represents only 0.9% of the overall Easton budget, but it's over 100% increase. And you may remember that I disparaged this cost center last year and compared it to other districts, which are easily 2 or 3 times greater. This cost center represents a sign of a healthy district with a strong strategic plan. High quality school systems are always refreshing textbooks and resources. They have strong leadership positions and coordinators that support teachers in delivering revised and refreshed curriculums. I've worked in 3 Durgay school districts. And as I've stated earlier, this cost center is an engine that drives growth and student achievement. And I've seen this type of commitment in this area in the districts that I've worked with. So our strategic plan, if implemented with fidelity, should have this cost center humming for the next 4 years. And the key investments in this cost center include math textbooks for $45,000 at the middle school. And obviously board approval will be required for that. We're studying that now. New middle school science curriculum. We're adding a personal interest project in grade 8, which is reflecting of our strategic priorities. And so there's an increase of $5,125. So students can have kind of a capstone experience in grade 8. So in summary, we're pleased to grow this cost center and align it to our strategic plan. And this is the question I've asked at the beginning. This is an area of the budget where we ask, how do we improve versus how much can we improve? Our 7th cost center is district-wide. And if the curriculum and instruction cost center is the engine, the district-wide cost center is the nervous system. It includes medical insurance, food services, transportation, substitutes, utilities, legal and audit services. This cost center is probably the most susceptible to inflationary pressure. The total cost center represents $4,133,777, which represents 22.5% of the Easton budget and has a 7.63% increase budget to budget. Overall transportation costs have increased by 4% or $35,000. Generally, our bus contract increases about 2% each year. As noted earlier, health insurance is projected to increase by approximately 10%. This topic requires us to have a deep dive to see whether we are comfortable with that level. Overall, utilities and legal services are increasing. Electricity is increasing to 10%. Our final cost center is central office, and while it's not really a cost center, it's more an equal share for each district. Central office includes the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, director of finance and operations, the human resource manager, and various support staff. The total cost center is $735,000, which represents 3.9% of the overall budget and represents about a 6.8% increase budget to budget. My overall impression of this cost center is that you're getting a remarkable return on your investment, considering it's a small staff managing 3 districts, currently delivering 2 budgets simultaneously. And I've worked a lot in education. I can tell you that this is one of the more complex and challenging tasks that I've experienced during my career. This cost center includes $17,400 from a transfer from the facilities cost center to this cost center. We've budgeted about 2 to 3% salary increases, depending on whether the staff is certified or non-certified next year. And we're happy to discuss this cost center in greater detail at the tri-board meeting at the end of this month. So in section 6, we're finally getting to the big picture and the overview. Here's an overview of all the cost centers which comprise the Easton budget. As mentioned before, the Samuel Staples Elementary School cost center is increasing by 1.38%. The Helen Keller Middle School cost center is increasing by 4.2%. The special education cost center remarkably is flat. The facilities cost center is increasing by approximately 25%. Again, but it accounts for only 2.3% of the overall budget. The technology cost center is increasing by 6.27%. The curriculum instruction cost center is $172,000, which represents 0.9% of the overall education budget. The district-wide cost center is increasing 7.6%. The central office cost center for $735,065 is increasing 0.86%. Therefore, the superintendent proposed 2023-2024 education budget is $18,743,350, which represents a 4.3% increase, or an increase of $783,208. Finally, community engagement. We're proud of the work associated with this budget, including our strategic priorities. We plan to develop a budget website. In fact, Sarah's probably going to send that to you momentarily. Similar to last year, we're going to link our strategic priority website to the budget website. Together, these tools will provide increased transparency and understanding around our financial investments in education. However, more importantly, they'll allow us to have a dialogue with the community through stakeholders, through our website, our survey, our social media, and so on. And we obviously also plan to have some in-person meetings with our PTAs and our faculty and at various town venues to answer people's questions about our budget. So to close, COVID-19 has wreaked havoc in education and certainly impacted student achievement by anywhere from 5 to 10%. Students definitely lost ground. I feel this event brought student achievement into greater focus. During the past decade, state funding and aid has not kept up with rising healthcare costs and special education needs. Utility costs are rising. Multi-year budgets can help reduce the impacts of these structural deficits, but they won't improve student achievement without strategic investments that support teaching and learning. School districts can get caught in the cycle of yearly cuts, crowding out the possibility of new endeavors and advancements in the classroom. I hope that our strategic plans are funded. I hope we can make smaller decisions this year so that larger, more difficult decisions are averted down the road. The school district that believes in these investments will significantly improve the quality of education. Last year, 8 in 10 community members in Easton supported our budget, and I'm hopeful that continued support will occur this year. Our job is to make a compelling case for lasting change, and through your leadership, I believe that we can accomplish that goal. And finally, I'd like to thank our school leadership teams, our principals, our secretaries, our custodians. Thank you for all your work in developing the budget. And for our central office, thank you for your work as well. Everyone's fingerprints are on this document, and it represents a blueprint for future success. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Do we want to,
Do we have questions or we?
No, do we have questions?
I will, yes.
Sure. Yeah, I think, we'll do some of that now. We'll do it online and we'll do it through the portal and. we'll just go
Or
back here.
would we rather just do it at the workshop?
I think we can start touching on stuff. We don't have, it's barely 8 o'clock and, yeah. If there's some things we want to talk about now, let's dive into it and then we'll pick it up again next week.
For the new, oh, sorry. For the new, position in central office. That'll be something that it's gonna combine facilities and also what the business manager currently does.
Yes.
Is this something that the job description we're gonna post and we're gonna interview from anyone that would qualify?
Yeah, absolutely. The current business manager position is focused on really 3 primary areas, which are food services, as you know, transportation and accounting. And we have this K-12 facilities manager, which we conceived last year, and it was split between Easton and Reading, 17,400 invested from Easton, 17,400 invested from Reading, and it funded a position that existed at Joel Barlow High School, which was the director of buildings and grounds. The idea was that that person would work equally in 3 districts. In reality, that hasn't happened. That person has been consumed at Joel Barlow based on their needs. And we cannot continue funding East. Actually, I don't think we've actually even funded that position over there. We have to check on that.
Okay.
Okay, but the goal is to look at the business manager position, which included those areas, and to add facilities and operations to recapture the business manager salary and the responsibilities of the facilities manager.
Okay.
And not to have that shared position, that shared K-12
Right.
facilities, but have the director of the high school and the position, and it's budget neutral.
Okay. The outplacements are up $180,000, and yet special ed is budget neutral. There was a pretty good chunk of change that was going to be saved from the BABC.
BCBA.
Yeah, BCBA, hiring them at 62,000 and saving the 80 plus thousand that we had been paying.
It's about probably the previous number in that professional service line was approximately $155,000 dedicated to behavioral services,
right,
through a contract, which was, I think, Constellation. And we reduced that from 155,000 to 55,000. And in fact, let me show you really quickly. Just I think, Sarah, are you in the process of sending this to the board members?
Almost.
Almost.
I'm
So
gonna put his presentation in there, so. You know,
So-
by the time you're ending talking, I'll have it.
I'm wondering what the other offsets are that got us down to flat. That's where I'm going with it.
the other offsets. So the other offsets are in professional services and the way in which we used professional services and how we've recaptured some of those funds with actual positions
Okay,
and
Transportation.
transportation.
And
Transportation.
transportation.
okay, then the
Yeah.
savings there.
Yeah.
Okay, last question.
And I can bring up this is the special education cost center. And it's difficult to see in this manner. It's impossible to see. But if you had it on your own device, you can see that it's in column H, it's 0%, 0.3% increase. You can see we did get some extra funds through excess cost. And the various ups and downs for certified staff. So special education teachers are going down $9,800, pre-K teacher going down 28,957. Social workers going down. I think I talked about that in the cost center that people left, we hired people higher and lower.
Right,
And so when you look at this cost center as a whole, you can see kind of the positives and negatives.
I got you.
And and so in instructional supplies and services, this is where you can go, Jeff, into other professional services, for example. And you can see. Let me see if I can scroll up. Oh,
That is the first thing you have to scroll to the right.
oh. Yeah, it's not going up and down. Sweet.
There it is up, go up to the,
You're at the top.
you're at the top. Scroll the other direction.
Yes,
So you're trying to scroll over.
is that it? There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, there we
There we
go.
go.
So this, so right there, outside BCBA services.
Mhm.
So column E19, that was 119,000. And I don't know. I don't see, can they see that edit history? No, you can't see that on your sheet, but we can see them now. Where we started.
I actually lied, I've got two more.
Okay,
The ESSER grants, which end in 2024.
They have different ending dates, right? So
Right, there's
Our
22
ESSER is-
and then there's 23, 24. I may have this wrong, but it looked like $60,000 roughly of the ESSER grants were going toward 3 different positions. So that, and now the question that will come is that will you still need those positions for 24 and 25 after the dollars are gone? Are
well,
you expecting to? I guess it's just, it's a
I would say
question that
two.
it doesn't have an answer
Yeah.
today.
no, I think that's a good question. And there's actually an example of that in the Helen Keller budget this year where we have 2.5 math paras
Mhm.
and 1.5 was covered under ESSER, which we're pleased about. But when that ESSER 2 fund expired,
Yeah, ESER 2 will expire at the end of this year, and our ESER is the one remaining.
so we're making a decision to fund 1 FTE instead of 1.5 FTE. So at that point, we are making a change. We're recognizing that we can't continue to fund the ESSER money once it's gone. And so that is an example of some savings that we're putting to, well, it's not a savings, it's a reduction of 1.5, but it's an increase by 1.0 in the budget.
So the planned offsets for next year include a $20,000 contribution towards the math coordinator position, so we don't anticipate that going away. And then the other has to do with a paraeducator to support the TESOL teacher. So this person will be intervening with students. And because we're talking about a change in our demographics, I don't anticipate that going away, sort of with pandemic recovery. And then the third is the math paraeducator Samuel Staples. So at this point, it's unknown whether our math needs will continue to be at a higher than typical level, or with another year, whether we might be able to, in that area.
But I think it's a way of phasing in some of these positions
Mhm.
in year 1 and seeing a smaller increase in year 2. So yeah, these funds will go away and we'll have to make a decision to keep these services. I think that we probably would if we decided to go with them in the first place.
When you look at math and you look at the 2 buildings, is the addition of the FTE that's split between us and Reading, is that impacting your thoughts around a para or some other partial FTEs, or
No.
there's no correlation?
The
Yeah.
math coordinator position is entirely a separate role. The greatest need right now is at our middle school level. That's where we really need to have the most focused attention right now. But the coordinator position is really a leadership role that is going to analyze curriculum implementation in the classrooms, be modeling, really look at fidelity of implementation in a way that a paraeducator simply cannot. And honestly, even a certified teacher, our current math specialists don't have the time or the role to do that type of work. They're not administrators. The math coordinator role is an administrative role.
Right, but just staying on that theme, one of the things that we've heard as a board year in, year out is the math specialist gets pulled into a role that is not what the math specialist was intended for 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
Right.
Well, the math specialist role has always included intervention as well as coaching. They don't have time to do the coaching part of their role, but it has always included intervention.
So it could be that the math coordinator provides more coaching
Coaching.
and leadership, which will allow the math specialist to provide more intervention. And so that's one way in which, you're providing more support for students.
The last question is, you've got 0.4 ESL teacher is an addition. Did you come up with 0.4 because you've taken the kids that need the help and did the math so that 0.4 is going to meet their needs?
There are currently 26 students who are learning to speak English in Easton. The greatest number is at Samuel Staples, the greatest number in all 5 schools. There is a much lesser need at the high school level, and the Reading need is less than Easton, but it does change a little bit from year to year.
Well, the
It's not
question is,
exactly proportional.
0.4 is going to be 2 days, basically. Is that enough instruction to help those kids get up to speed?
Well, it's not entirely. So that's why that role goes hand in hand with the paraeducator that would work under that individual. So the TESOL teacher will have the expertise to model, create programs, work directly with teachers, really talk about how we should be supporting these students in the classroom,
Okay,
communicating with parents, that a coordinator role. They will model, hopefully, for a paraeducator who would then be charged with intervening with these students. Some of these students require 5 days a week of support. So of course, with a 0.4 position, there's not enough of that one individual to support all of these students. And we're trying to, again, pull back on some of the need for our literacy specialists to be providing this intervention so that they can be intervening with other students as well as coaching.
And your literacy specialists are also spending time to identify the English language learner students, test the English language learner students, track them over time. And so there's an administrative function that our reading teachers are spending. They're burning calories in the English language learner area.
right.
And that's something that the MLL teacher would take on, which means our reading specialists will have more time focusing on their job description.
I just want to make sure that we have enough firepower to be able to help the kids that need the help, as opposed to saying, well, we're trying to fit a 1.0 into these 3 districts. So we're going to put a little here, a little there, and a little there. I'd rather see us just hire our own if that's what we need to make sure these kids are taken care of.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that. We had that conversation back and forth with our school leadership team and also in central office, and really trying to find the best way to make this, one, stick in the budget proposals, but 2, provide direct support to our students. And that's why ultimately I looked at the ARP ESSER grant as a way to provide some additional support and allow us in year 1 to really assess whether this is an adequate level. Certainly having 1 full-time TESOL teacher in each district, at least Easton and Reading, would be ideal. But if you look at the qualifications of this individual, it is our hope that a highly qualified person would be able to train a single para under that person.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jack.
A suggestion and a help for me would be to understand when we're talking about FTEs or portional FTEs, whether their role will be directly aligned to individual students, or their role will be aligned to teachers and coaching and mentoring and being in the classroom, facilitating the instruction that the teachers are providing, whether it is implementing or helping implement, again, with the teachers or the students, brand new curriculum, right? So our new math, our new science, is this individual that we're bringing to the district? Because there's been a conversation for as long as I've been on the board about FTEs and our student teacher ratios, and why do we continually need or do we not need new FTEs? Clearly the last 2+ years and the pandemic and distance learning and the loss of learning and how that sort of matriculates through the grades, I think that's pretty well understood. But going back to my original point, it's really just it's helping us understand how that specific FTE, what their what their role will be, for lack of a better term, their job description, but is it directly hand in hand with the students or with the teachers, or a combination of two? And to the extent that it's augmenting a role that we currently have, but that person is stretched way too thin and therefore ineffective, or ineffective based on, and we know this to be the case based on test scores, or based on performance, or based on additional intervention, frankly, that's required at level 1 or level 2. I know that's a lot, but and maybe it can be synthesized, but I think that's important for me to understand, and then obviously for the rest of the town to appreciate as we go forward with with the budget increase. And FTEs, so.
Right, so your question is FTE allocation, and really you're asking how a teacher or an administrator or a leader spends their time.
Mhm.
And when they spend their time, what are their responsibilities? Are they spending it more towards helping a student with interventions, helping a teacher with professional development, be a better teacher? And then the kind of the return on investment versus one teacher versus 0.5 teacher versus should we double down and get, you're saying we need it, should we get 2 of them, right? And I think that conversation is part of a broader conversation once we get towards near the end of this process and we find out, what percent are we asking for? And what is the impact? What can we defend? What do we phase in over time? So we could say that the beauty of having a strategic plan is you could say, this is a stepping stone. We want to increase English language learner support by this much. We're not going to do it all in 1 year. We're going to do it in phase 1 and phase 2. So phase 1 strategic priority is we're going to add 1 teacher, and maybe next year we add 2. So if you can't get all you want in one particular year, then that's how you use that strategic plan. It's a blueprint, right? It's like a capital improvement plan. You can't replace the roof and the HVAC in 1 year. So when are you doing which project?
Right.
And my question may also be answered by the fact that you've tied these things back to the strategic priorities, and priority 1 is teaching, and so I may be unanswered, but I think it would be helpful just from the human aspect of it, the individuals that you're talking about. So
yeah. So each of these budget requests are tied to a strategic priority, and within priority 1, there are 12 or 13 specific priorities under that category: high quality teaching and learning. So if we want high quality teaching and learning, what do we need to do? We want to enhance our math textbooks. We are looking to add a K-12 math coordinator. If we want to meet the needs of all learners, which is category 4. I feel like this is a game show. You click on you click on category 4 and you'll see a specific priority that says a multi-language learner teacher or a structured literacy teacher. So
By the way,
each
now
of
that he
these,
said that, he's gonna say later on, he's gonna be like, so. Can
we turn this into a game.
can we turn that into when you click on it? Doesn't, yeah, yeah,
Well, you actually can click on that.
Yeah, yes.
It will take you to.
it's more like Family Feud.
That's right.
Because you'd have to pick the
Right.
categories. Yeah.
Right. But and many of the budget items hit multiple categories.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
The
right.
vision of a graduate can also include high quality instruction. Right.
Right.
These two things are connected.
Good questions. One, I know we had talked at some length around science and the potential need for a science coordinator, similar to what is in Reading. I'm not advocating for necessarily additional increases to the budget, but just wondering where that fits on the priority list potentially. I know our test scores were definitely not where we want them to be in 8th grade. And so just want to kind of hear the rationale there. And then second question is just, do you have an update on the right to read legislation
There we go.
and the
Well,
potential?
where's the 400,000 in the budget for that?
I will answer
waiver.
I'll answer the first question.
Yeah.
I'll answer the first question and Stephanie can answer the second question, because I know Stephanie is more closely tied to that. But in terms of the science, the coordinator, which in Reading they call it the stick position, science, technology, integration coordinator, instructional coach, something like that. But it's really more support for science. That actually is in the strategic plan. but it's in year 2.
Okay.
And so that's an example of how we've prioritized
That's great.
the math coordinator over the stick coordinator, because, you know, if you're adding our math scores, even though our scores in grade 8 weren't where they wanted to be, Dr. Clapp feels that was an anomaly, and he honestly feels that we're going to rebound there in grade 8. But our math scores have been trending in the wrong direction for several years. And at the same time, we're implementing a new math curriculum. That could be the time we implement this position. Dr. Clapp, is that fair?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And we will have new science materials hopefully at the middle school level, and I think that will certainly be a boost to student engagement and their performance as well. In terms of the right to reach legislation, I do not have an update since the last time we spoke about this in mid-December. I think the last time we were all together, I shared the latest update, which is that the state has pushed back the deadline until the end of February. This is not really a big surprise to anyone. I have a meeting tomorrow with assistant superintendents in area districts just to get a pulse on where everyone is. I certainly what I hear is that many districts that are similar to Easton will be requesting the waiver.
Yeah, do you know if the waiver's been published yet? I know when we met last, it hadn't
Right,
been
it had
published.
not yet been published. It had not been published before we left for the holiday break. I can say that there are lots of publishing companies that are trying to pull together support materials because the information that the state is expecting in our submission is quite comprehensive.
Before the holidays, there was a CES council lunch along with, I think, chairs and sort of local superintendents were invited. And there's really good attendance. It was with legislators. And this came up. Chris Parkin, the chair over in Reading, was very eloquent in sort of outlining the pain points that this legislation has caused. I tacked on a little bit, and the room was unanimous that, hey, this is really painful. The person who wrote the legislation was in the room. And she stood up and explained sort of why it was written and how it's supposed to work. And I think everyone was very sympathetic to, yes, we get that, and we're supportive of every child got the opportunity to become literate and to love reading. And it was really just a function of the operational processes. That was, the waiver's not available yet, and we're in the middle of budget season. And so we need to know that we're going to be able to get that budget, that waiver before we finalize our budgets. And
Yes.
they were very sympathetic. The legislative folks in the room were very sympathetic to that. So I think we're going to land in the right spot.
Yeah, and and as I said a number of times, no one disagrees with the science of reading or the importance of emphasizing foundational skills in the development of literacy. The difficulty here is the process that's being imposed as a one size fits all for every single district across the state of Connecticut.
Yeah, and we talked about the process for certifying other programs into the approved set of programs instead of, these are the 5 and they're always the 5. We should talk about the efficacy, and we should talk about how could we add another one if
Right.
you think there's a good candidate, there should be a process for getting it added.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and that process started to some extent last spring, but at that point, when districts were invited to submit materials, it was the obstacle to becoming approved was incredibly significant. Because unless one was choosing a comprehensive program that was already sort of on a list being vetted, the answer was going to be no. So I expect that I will have more of an update next month.
So Sarah just sent you the budget website tool, which is this website.
Well, so I will send you the sheet first, and I will send you an email in just a moment when I finish composing it, that has the website link.
And so what you'll get in a moment is the presentation, which is here. And it's similar to last year. It will have last year's budget. And this is where there are the sheets right here. So you'll be able to access the sheets in the various cost centers. And then you can ask a question. Is it right here, sir? Okay,
You're in the.
I'm in the preview.
You're in the
mode,
preview.
right? Yeah. So you'll be able to ask a question if you click on this. I think I sent you the survey link to ask questions as well.
Yep.
And this will link off of the main er9.org website.
Does right now.
Awesome. Cool. Can we get a vanity URL too? Like budgetcrazy.com or something?
We could, but it costs $100 and we have that conversation.
Not
I
budget.
said, no.
Not, no, just-
We changed the little thing, have the Yarn logo in there.
One more question.
Yeah.
So just in terms of transportation, and this maybe is transportation team question. As we continue to increase the number of students with like COVID things waning or whatever it is. And more kids probably have been going back to the bus. Have we reevaluated like lengths of time on the bus or done anything to ensure that kids aren't? I know I took my kids off the bus because it was a really unbelievably awful ride home. So it's just taking a long time. So I'm just wondering if there's been any additional looks. Just given that there's more kids and I think more kids are now riding the bus to school. Have we just?
We can get that data for you and present at a upcoming workshop.
But I don't want you to have to do some more work. I'm just trying to.
Kindergarten across the street gets home at 4:45 p.m. And I thought in the beginning it would get because I knew it was limited, sorry, no comments. Sorry.
No, thank you
But
for letting us
4:45
know.
p.m. and leaves the house at 8:20 a.m.
We can get you more data on that. They were able to reduce the budget, reduce a bus over in the Reading budget,
Okay,
but we did not change any buses in Easton, but I will make sure that it's calibrated and that we'll look at the ride lengths.
okay. Yeah, just wondering. Okay, thank you.
Kim, are more people taking the bus or more people dropping off and picking up?
Well, let me put it this way. More people are taking the bus, but more drivers are really not doing a good job.
I love your email.
That's for sure.
I missed those emails.
Yes. I'm
So
sure
when dropping off.
Just a gentle
A gentle
reminder. Stay in your car.
Stay in your car or you'll be arrested.
I have a taser.
What about you, Dr. Clark?
Ridership on the buses is definitely up. Drop offs are down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. Any other, Jen, hanging in there?
She's on. Oh, she's turning her video on. She's
Oh.
waving at us.
All right. All
I
right.
didn't want to be full screen up in the room, so. No, I appreciate Dr. McKinnon and the administration's work towards the budget. And once I have a soft copy of the material, I can provide some feedback.
Sounds good. Thank you. If there's nothing else, we'll move on to 5B, curriculum meeting.
Do you want that sheet that I give you every year with regard to?
Absolutely.
Kids?
Sure.
You do not have?
So on the back of your packet, there is an updated draft of the proposed Easton Board of Education 2023 curriculum committee meeting schedule. The March meeting, which was originally was planned to happen prior to the Easton Board of Education meeting, which was at one point planned for March 14th, would move to March 9th.
Right.
And so we would like to move the curriculum committee meeting to also be on March 9th, so it continues to happen in front of or before the March 4th, before the now scheduled March 9th Board of Education meeting. Thank you. That was helpful. And then the second change was the June meeting. And again, the Reading meeting.
Just pull them together.
Just to make sure that the curriculum committee meeting that now will happen in Reading in June is on the same date as the Reading Board of Ed meeting, so that people who have meetings only have to travel one day in those months. And since the meetings are not now all on Tuesdays, we just removed that language from the top.
Are we looking for a motion?
We are.
Motion to approve as presented.
Second.
Alicia, thank you.
Can I, as a sort of point of order, how we do this, I believe that the curriculum committee actually needs to approve this themselves. I believe they approved their own schedule and then they send it to central office to be conveyed to the state before January 30th, 31st. I think it's great though to present these same calendars within the full board as well, but I don't think our vote here is the binding one. I think it's the curriculum committee has to also vote to do this.
Makes
I
sense.
think the only voting members though on the curriculum committee are the board members and
Yeah.
administration. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that vote could occur with that
Like right now,
subgroup.
I don't know. I
Since
think
it's
you
an
have to notice a
agenda
curriculum
item.
committee meeting in order to have that vote.
Could we do it? We could do it over Zoom.
Yeah, you can totally get it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it just has to be this month.
So, sorry.
No, that's fine. So we can take a perfunctory vote or, and then.
It doesn't hurt for us to vote. Yeah.
Right, all right, all in favor?
Jen, are you, yeah, Jen is raising her
Raise your
hand.
hand.
Can you say yes to?
Yes.
Thank you, all right, motion carries 6-0, thank you.
I just want to
Maybe-
confirm that we can do that virtually if we can't get to the location by 6 p.m.
Yes, you can. Just if you let me know, then we can set up a Zoom. Absolutely.
Yeah, there was a state law passed about a year ago that says for any meeting of any municipal, people can join remotely. They just have to let the chair know like a day before. So,
Fair enough.
Okay.
And just to clarify that, I'm trying to switch between the soft copy and the screen. I think there was 4 meetings on the calendar. That's all that are scheduled for this year, right? That's the full scope of meetings? Or is that just a subset?
This is the full set, except for the special meeting we will schedule sometime before January 31st to approve this calendar as a committee, which will take hopefully 5 minutes. On Zoom.
So,
Thanks, Devin.
Thank you.
no,
Randy, before we leave discussion and possible action. The Facilities Advisory Committee has come up with a charge
okay,
and we'd like to present it.
can we have a motion to amend the agenda to include this item?
let's do that first.
Okay,
I move to amend the agenda to add the discussion of the Facilities Advisory Committee charge as item 5C.
Second, thank you, Jeff. Very good.
all in favor?
Any discussion? No, all in
No
favor?
discussion.
Very good. Thank you.
Jen's
Jen.
also raising her hand.
Okay. Okay,
Okay, the obviously every committee that the board approves needs to have a charge. So Alicia was good enough to go and get the Reading charge and make a couple of little changes to it. And rather than try to rewrite the world. So this is the purpose of the Easton Board of Education Facilities Advisory Committee is a standing committee that shall work with the Director of Finance, Operations and Technology, School Administration, head custodians to ensure the buildings and grounds and associated facilities are preserved, enhanced, and properly maintained. The committee will also work to proactively identify and plan for cost-effective capital improvements with the dual goal of providing a safe and engaging learning environment and optimizing the town's investment in school facilities. The committee will make regular updates to the board and will present a recommended capital plan for the board no less than annually. And the structure itself, the advisory committee shall have at least 2 members of the Easton Board of Education, the Director of Finance, Operations and Technology, School Administration, head custodians, members of the public, or other town boards as may be deemed appropriate by the chairman. The quorum shall equal 1 more than half of the voting members of the committee. The board chairman shall appoint members to the committee and given the public notice at that meeting of the board and may replace members in the same fashion. The committee shall the committee shall select its own chairperson.
We don't say exactly who the voting members are in here. Is it understood that the voting members are just the Easton board members? Or would it be considered that it's the Easton board members plus the director of finance operations and tech, or plus, is it everyone on the board, or what's the?
It's not in the writing meeting.
I don't know that it makes a lot of sense to have a voting membership that may be, 10, 12 or
That gets
13.
messy.
I would think so. Certainly the two board members, I would think the director of finance, operations and technology.
Yeah.
And the superintendent.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Do we want to just add it, and we don't have to wordsmith in there, we could just add to the end,
Okay.
Voting members will include any appointed Easton board members, the director of finance operations and technology, as well as the superintendent.
Easton board.
Okay.
Okay. Director of finance and technology. And superintendent.
This is great. Thank you for doing this. It's not actually required for committees to have a chart, but when they don't, it's painful.
Well, the doors
Right. Like,
swinging all
what are
over
you
the
here
place.
for? Right.
Exactly. So if we can get this approved, or are there any other amendments or discussions or corrections?
Take a motion to approve as amended and second, and then we'll vote.
Okay,
Motion to approve as amended, the Facilities Advisory Committee charge.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other, all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Jen in favor? Yes.
That's
She
good.
doesn't have a
6-0.
copy.
Saying yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff and Alicia. All the best. Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, moving along, we'll go to item 6 on the agenda, board committee reports.
you want to take the walkthrough?
What?
Do you want to show the walkthrough? You want me to do-
You can go.
Okay. The facilities advisory committee, Alicia, myself, went to spend a good hour in both Staples and in Keller. We were met by the building principals, their lead custodians, and our supervisor of that doesn't exist anymore, but the supervisor of the position.
Something we did.
It's something. So the one meeting and boom. But we took a very extensive walkthrough. We got into boiler rooms. We got into where the elevator is. We wandered through the boiler rooms as well at Staples and Keller. Helen Keller has a lot of work that needs to be done. I would say it needs to be done rather quickly. We have a water problem, to be sure, at Keller, and we have not to the extent water problem, but we do have a water problem in Samuel Staples as well. And for any of us that have been around long enough to remember what happened to the old Samuel Staples School, where we went from arguing who should be in charge of fixing it, whether it was the town or whether it was the Board of Education, did it long enough so that there was such a gathering of black mold and water seepage that the town had to come up with a $32 million bond for a little school down here in the street called Samuel Staples Elementary School. So we don't want to repeat of that, and we think it's important that we move as quickly as possible. I know we have a yet to be decided meeting date with Dr. McKinnon and Sarah on giving them a full report. We took a lot of pictures. And
You're gonna like the pictures.
the pictures.
We've been on those tours.
Oh, you have?
Oh, yeah.
Have they changed the baggie on the,
The Hefty
Right,
bag's
it's
still there?
updated to some-
oh, you got colored duct tape this time. That's nice.
Yeah.
So at any rate, and then we certainly would want to get Public Works involved and also get the Board of Finance involved in seeing what's up and seeing what we're doing, so they can help understand in much greater detail what the problems are that we are facing, and that getting them done sooner is better than getting them done later. That's what I've
Noted.
got.
All right, you ever thought about putting a pool in here? Take it, water problem? No.
Yeah. More water, that's a good idea.
Take the water that's coming up, we'll just put it down below.
Just like,
in the pool.
we'll just, we need to add water to it. It's like, chipper to water.
Exactly. Yeah.
Worth
Ellen
leaking.
Keller's from there. Any other committee reports? No?
We had a DEI task force meeting right before the holidays on December 20th. We had the consultant who is working across the districts come and he did a session, just like a brief overview of the work that he is currently doing across the different buildings. He talked a little bit about the book study, culturally responsive teaching in the brain, explained kind of what that is, and then kind of how he is personalizing his work in partnership with Dr. Kirsten Ugal for the different buildings and those specific needs. And we then, Dr. McKinnon talked more specifically about the priority of meeting all students' needs and how that connects to DEI work. We will manage to finish the whole meeting in 1 hour and 1 minute, which I think is an amazing feat. And then, but I think Region 9 have like 3 meetings in a row.
And we were still meeting up until
Yes,
yesterday.
I think, yeah. I think we just ended.
And we introduced 2 new.
We introduced
members,
2 new
right?
student, 3 new student members. Student rep from Joel Barlow High School, as well as one from Helen Keller, who their name is Arjun.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
Sure, kid.
yeah, great, really like had multiple great comments and questions. Really lovely student and has emailed a couple times, just really great. And then also a student rep from Reading, John Reading.
All right,
Food Service Committee, just a reminder that on the 23rd of January, when you come back after your long weekend, there will be no more free lunches. And so you need to bring a couple of quarters with you so that you can buy the lunch of your choice. Or, but this again, I know that the administration has done a great job in sending out information to parents. But just a reminder again that on Monday, the 23rd, we'd hate to have your child come in and expect to get a free meal and not have that happen. So.
Can I just make a quick comment / suggestion about the not communication, but it would just, there are a couple ways with the we have the food account you put money into, my school bucks. And if you just reminding parents, if you put in $20 at a time, they charge you every single time a very nice hefty fee. But if you put in, let's say $60, it's the same fee. Like I learned that the very hard way by having my account hit like $20 and then they automatically refresh it with $20 more or whatever. And when you have 2 kids that are at different account balances and you have an auto refresh for each of them, you just get hit with lots of fees. But if you just put one lump sum in, it's the same fee. So I don't know if parents realize that, but it's $2.50, I think, each time it hits your account. And if your kids eat 4 slices of pizza every Friday and you have 2 of them, it adds up very quickly. So I just.
it's $2.50 to put $20 in your account.
It's a processing
It's
fee.
either 2.5%. If you put in $100.
It sounds like we need to have a conversation that
Well,
I mean,
or no, but it's the same amount. It's the same amount for any, so like,
Right.
if I do $20 or $100,
That's it.
No, I get that, but.
right,
Yeah,
gone.
it's absurd.
it's a lot of money.
It's like going on ATM.
It is.
Yeah.
You're not making it pass under checks.
It's
Right.
it's more than 10%.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's way easier than me having to have cash or write a check. I'm not as worried about the fee. It was just, I didn't realize that I could avoid paying $2.50 a week, basically, or I could just put in more money and pay that fee one time a month or one time every 3 months or something. So I just think there's some tips and tricks to saving money that might be helpful to share with families.
I would be really open to investigating some other options
Yeah.
That's fine
for
too.
online vendors.
Yeah.
That could offer us some different service,
Okay.
options. So if that's something that you'd like me to investigate, I would be happy to do so.
No, that would be lovely as well. I think the online option is a huge convenience, but I was just a bit mortified when I realized also you don't have to do each child at one time. You can like link them and that saves you. It just was like, wow, I could save. So,
$2. Yeah.
right, and it really does add up over.
Yes.
Weeks. Anyway, that's all.
Okay, that's good. Good info.
Yes.
Anything else? Food service? We have a long weekend this week. We have another long weekend the weekend after? No.
I haven't thought that far ahead.
I
We'll be focusing on.
think that has to answer.
Yeah.
Duly noted. Moving right along.
Well, isn't it like
This weekend.
this weekend?
This weekend is a 4-day weekend and then we have.
Oh,
one in
Martin Luther
February.
King.
We have to finish
Not the following weekend.
No.
That's February.
February.
Okay.
I hope.
President's Day.
No, so we don't have, like, you guys don't have Friday off. The high school has Friday off, but you don't have Friday off.
Students have Friday off.
Students have Friday off.
Oh, the teacher.
Yeah, teacher.
Oh, that's right.
Right.
I was like, no, my kids are.
Yeah, 4 days.
All right, hey, we're flying. Any other committee reports? We're good? No, excellent. Moving to item 7, board member comment.
I just want to say thank you, this budget and the presentation of the, well, one, I think the starting with like strategic planning, 3-year, 4-year look at the work, phasing kind of out our priorities and better understanding how those priorities drive to a budget was extremely helpful. And then presenting the budget in a very clear way. I think the cost center work you guys did last year is like unbelievably helpful in really understanding the allocation of resources, the different schools and the different kind of how the needs across the different cost centers break out, but then being able to see it aligned to priorities, I think is really, really eye-opening. And the presentation was obvious. I'm sure you've done it a couple of times in different ways, but preparing for Reading and Easton, which have different needs, I think just really thank you. It was very clear and I think kicks us off on a really nice foot to go through some budget workshops and go in front of the town and board of finance and all the people in a really lovely way.
Thank you. Yeah, John, good. Yeah.
Jen, anything?
Well, first, thank you. And it's, I'm disappointed I can't be at next week's workshop. I will be traveling for work, but I will provide my questions and comments to the board and to Dr. McKinnon and team prior to that. Can someone remind me kind of what the next steps are after we have the workshop next week? I'm trying to remember how things sort of rolled out last year with, meetings with the Board of Finance and such.
I actually have a budget date calendar.
The entire month of January, February is one go.
And,
No sleep, no sleep.
so next Tuesday is the Easton Board workshop. We've got Brown and Brown at 6 p.m. The workshop at 7. If you start sending your questions to us on the budget, what we did.
6 p.m. Okay.
Well, yes, Brown and Brown at 6 by Zoom, that will probably be the Eastern budget workshop at 7 p.m. on the 17th. And what we did last year is that you started to send questions. And based on those questions, we actually developed kind of a almost like a pre-presentation, and we try to answer all of your questions into categories.
Yeah.
So we can do that again. And then, so we've got Easton on Tuesday, Reading on Thursday, Region 9 following Tuesday. The tri-board meeting is at the end of the month, which is the 31st. And then we go into February, and then it's the first week in February, it's Reading and a Reading budget workshop. And then the second week in February is an Eastern board meeting on February 14th. But the workshop is not until the following on the 21st of February. So I can send you all of these dates. And then we start the Region 9 budget process and workshop. And we're still doing, in March, we're still doing board meetings.
We
The
don't sit in front of the Board of Finance until middle of March. end of
the
March?
27th of March, Monday, 27th of March. Is when we go towards for the Board of Finance.
Yeah.
I'll be sick on that.
It's kind of a show.
No, you better be there.
Yes, yes, March 22nd.
Will we have any further discussion on the budget after next week's meeting, or will that be the final
we'll have two
decision
more.
on what goes forward?
We'll have
What's
two
that?
more we'll have two more in February.
Okay, good. Okay, so I can join those parties.
Don't worry, you'll get your chance.
Oh,
to
yeah, no.
Get your fill
The
of
bus
budget.
won't leave without you.
That's gonna be a long one.
Okay. All right, very good. Any other board member comment?
I wanted to thank Dr. Clapp and folks at Samuel Staples for the tour the other day. I mean, we had just come back from the holiday and popped over to see you guys the next morning, and we had a fun tour, lots of good information. And just scheduled it very quickly and got it on calendars, for which I really appreciate very much. Jeff, you didn't mention the parking lot. I didn't want to throw that out there to make sure that that was mentioned as one of our primary items.
Yes, it is.
And to thank you for a wonderful budget, very thoughtfully put together, very nicely tied to the strategic initiatives, which I very much appreciate as a first budget season
Mhm.
member here with the board. But thank you very much for putting this together in a way that's very easy to understand and comprehend.
You're welcome.
I also just wanted to thank Alicia and Jeff for, taking the lead on all the work that's needed around capital improvements and analyzing that. I know that's no small task. Just, appreciate your willingness to take a leadership role there. Thank you.
Yeah. All set? Excellent. Motion to adjourn unless anybody wants to continue this madness. Yeah, don't do it.
Second.
Second. So adjourn. 8:44.
8:44, that's not bad.
That's right, it's right around the third.
It's-
That's right.